And I just want to say, I've talked to all the other networks, but I ain't going nowhere uh, other than TNT. But I have made the decision myself. No matter what happens, next year is going to be my last year on television. And I just want to say thank you to my NBA family. You guys been great to me. My heart is full with joy and gratitude. But I'm going to pass the baton at the end of next year.
Legendary broadcaster and NBA Hall of Famer Charles Barkley hinted at retirement.
We don't know what would happen to the show if we lose it, but it really doesn't do us any good to try to make any plans until we lose the package or hear something.
Yeah.
So, and I think the limbo is probably the weirdest dynamic of the whole thing.
Sure.
We can't even have an honest discussion like, hey, would you go to here? Would you go to here?
Right.
We're like, you know what? Let's just wait. Because and that goes back to my original point. None of this means anything because we still got to work together for another year.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, it doesn't do us any good. Hey, would you guys go to Amazon? Hey, would you guys go to NBC? Would you guys go to ESPN? I'm like, dude, we got another year to be together. So worrying about something that's a year and a half away is really just kind of stupid.
Which was a far cry from his interview with SI's Jimmy Trana.
Charles says a lot of things, and there are times when I go, I don't believe that you believe that. This one felt like, maybe that is true.
A man who has known Charles for decades, Dan Patrick, believes Charles meant what he said, that retirement is on the horizon.
I hope the NBA stays with TNT, but for me personally, I wanted you guys to hear from me because I'm not doing any more interviews. Don't y'all be calling me. Nobody calling me. I'm not talking about this again, but I want to tell my NBA and NBA TV and TNT family that I'm not going to another network, but I'm going to pass the baton to either Jamal Crawford or Vince Carter or you, Steve. But next year, I'm going to just retire after 25 years, and I just want to say thank you.
It seems more legit than ever because of what we know with David Zaslav leading the way for Warner Brothers Discovery in these ongoing negotiations. But is it legit? Sports Media Watch printed an article 2 days ago where they went through all the times Sir Charles would threaten retirement. The grand total was 9 times, shout out Ferris Bueller, ranging from his playing days to his broadcasting days. Then, in an interview with The Athletic, he gave quotes saying he would retire by 60. He is now 61 years of age. One should also not forget.
There is this rumor I've heard from a couple people in the golf world that the Live Tour is coming after you as like a face of their media, like an analyst or something like that. Is there any truth to that, or is this just rumor?
I'm going to meet with Liv.
So there is some truth.
Truth, to be always transparent and honest. They called me and asked me would I meet with them, and I said yes.
He toyed with the idea of joining Live Golf, even meeting with Greg Norman, only then to solidify a deal with TNT that paid him roughly $100 million over 10 years with the chance of reaching $200 million. Let's just have a pause here for a moment and go over the history inside of the history. Because you see, we saw the likes of Tom Brady retire from the National Football League, ponder getting into broadcasting, and then landing a humongous deal with Fox Sports. We saw a former quarterback who worked for Fox Sports, Troy Aikman, get a bag from ESPN as they kept the Buck-Aikman duo together for Monday Night Football. Charles Barkley saw all of this and said, and I quote at one point, "Listen, if somebody gave me $200 million, I'd kill a relative," close quote. He would then get a massive deal that was between $100 million and $200 million, with that figure ranging over 10 years. And then, shout out to the Ringer's Brian Curtis, because he put together a fantastic write-up of all this as well. Barkley's skill as a negotiator relies on two qualities. First, he's the most finely tuned quote machine in NBA history. A typical Charles soundbite includes a promise of transparency. Great point, because he always says to open up a sentence, I'm not going to lie to you. Mild to heavy provocation, and an approach to accuracy that could be described as close enough. The second key to Charles Barkley's negotiating skills is that he is always available. Articles, television, podcasts, etc. In the same way Tom Hanks used to bless a new late night show with a guest spot, Barkley has appeared on the first episodes of Any Given Wednesday, the Manning Cast Get Up, TNT's NHL studio show, where we thought he'd be an analyst in years past. This week, he gave an interview to The Times about Inside's fate, despite protests from Turner PR and his co-host. And then there would be Dylan Byers of Puck News, who had his headline titled "The Barkley Sweepstakes," which is great, by the way. And here was part of that. Barkley will presumably play the field, but there's ample reason to believe that NBC will hold special appeal. NBC Sports chief Mark Lazarus was the man who brought Sir Charles to TNT, and he maintains a close relationship with the network. If Barkley were to leave, the rival networks would court Shaquille O'Neal as well, in the hopes of bringing the duo over together. Collectively, Shaq, the far superior pro, is more of a role player in this space, which is a great point. An odd contradiction, as outlined by Curtis, was this. In an interview with ESPN Cleveland, Chuck was asked how vital it was to keep the NBA on TNT crew together. His quote, "It's not that important to me," adding, "I've got to make sure I look out for myself." Look, this was a shocker, because all that we heard from many was how they wanted to keep the band together. And we all know that they are simply irreplaceable. Yet, Barkley would go on the air with Dan Patrick once more and say he would indeed love to stay together with his teammates and produce the show through his own production company, which is another wrinkle, because there's more than one. I believe Charles has one, Shaq has one, and a member of the inside crew has one. So the question then becomes, whose production company would basically have the show and then distribute it out? Those are things that weigh in the balance, because that's probably, I would have to think, one topic of discussion amongst many when it comes to the inside crew. Yet Michael McCarthy of Front Office Sports gave his perspective as well, and he says that Charles is playing the game well publicly. Before his latest retirement, Barkley announcement, that is, said he was open to a job change, even revealing he insisted on an out clause in his TNT contract if the network were to lose the rights to broadcast the NBA. He joked about creating a LinkedIn page. He also held out the possibility of hiring Shaq, Kenny, and Ernie for his production company, then licensing it out. One source told Tuned In that he believed Charles issued his latest retirement warning to make the media stop pestering him about what he is going to do next. The great thing about him is everybody expects him to change on a dime and say outrageous things. That's just Charles being Charles. Either way, it's his last hoorah on Inside, and if it is, it will be must-see. If you think he was outspoken before, wait until next year. If TNT does lose the NBA, I, as in McCarthy, could see Barkley taking a long vacation, then returning to the airwaves in a big money deal with ESPN, NBC, or Amazon Prime that could approach $20 million a year. At least he'd be secure in the knowledge he did everything he could to save the jobs of hundreds of colleagues at TNT. A totally fair point. I believe it was on Dan Patrick when Charles Barkley said, "These are people that my kids grew up with, that I have known for many years." Or maybe it was Ernie Johnson. It was one of the two. But they basically said they would bring their kids in when they were younger. And now, because they've been together for so long, and the crew has been together for so long, and the production people have been together for so long, that they saw their kids graduate college and go out into the workforce or graduate high school. That is something that is irreplaceable, and why so many of these broadcast teams want to stay together. Yes, of course, they would go for another venture to make more money. But what we know from this show is, number one, they truly like each other. And number two, the sheer honesty that they give and the laughter that they have, the fun that you can tell resonates, bleeds through the TV and goes to their audience. And I am certainly one of them. What does Charles do? Apparently, it is totally up in the air, and he could be playing the media game. Quite frankly, because we have seen the flip-flopping over the years, only time will tell.